Joint budget and school board meeting. Just to remind everyone, this is a joint meeting really for presentation purposes because this is such a big part of our budget that we want to make sure that it's an open dialogue, lots of questions are answered, and everybody's here and present for that. Anyone on school board can participate in conversation, budget can participate in conversation, health and ed can participate in conversation. When it comes time for me to call for a vote, the only folks who will be voting are health and education members. So the process tonight is for us to examine the budget, make a recommendation, then tomorrow night the budget committee will meet and they will review and discuss what was approved here tonight. Just want to make sure that that's fresh on everybody's mind. Okay, I've got a couple of housekeeping items before we go on. Because this meeting is being conducted electronically, there's a disclaimer we need to read and a motion we'll need to entertain. This meeting of the Health and Education Committee is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting this meeting electronically is necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus.
Madam Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. That's Commissioner Gourley. Do I have a second? Commissioner Phillips with a second. Rachel, will you give us a roll call?
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gourley?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips? Chairman Allen?
Yes, thank you. Okay, a couple things. I don't see Judge Ash here. We were contacted earlier today and asked if we would consider suspending the rules. There's a person who's recently passed the bar and they wanted to be sworn in the courthouse, which I appreciate and respect the significance of that. And so we were going to ask you all to suspend the rules so that we could do that. If they arrive shortly, we're not too deep into our meeting, I will continue to ask for that motion, but in light of them not being here and me not seeing anyone, we'll proceed. This meeting, we typically remove all other items from the agenda. All other departments are excused. But I did ask for Dana Garrett to share a COVID update with us. She won't be giving us her traditional monthly report. We will see that next month. And then I also think the mayor has some good news about community care he would like to share. So Dana, if you're available, let's go ahead and listen to your COVID update. Is she there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Just a quick update on where we are. At both health departments, we're still operating under a continued operation plan, or what we call the COOP plan. Basically, we're doing most of our services still over telehealth or over the phone. So we can still do just about every service that we've been offering by scheduling appointments or talking to people over the phone. So we recommend that anybody who needs any other service not related to COVID, just call the health department first, and we'll tell you how to best get those services at both the Murfreesboro and the Smyrna site. We are getting somewhere around 200 to 400 calls in a 15-minute period on any given day. So we're really taxing our phone system, as you can imagine. So I ask that the public be patient and just give us a minute, call back. And we've got, in the Murfreesboro site, we've got over 20 people answering the phone all day long, every day, trying to get to all the phone calls. And in Smyrna, we probably have 6 that are answering calls all day. So we're trying, just ask that people be patient with us because we are getting a ton of phone calls. And we are doing a lot more through the telephone. We've implemented even stricter, now that the doors are back open to the public, infection control measures at both facilities. All staff, patients, and vendors are screened with their temperature and CDC-approved questions before entering the building. All staff are masked at all times. All visitors are masked at all times. We're cleaning on an hourly basis. We're practicing the social distancing and wearing our PPE when social distancing can occur, like with a patient-provider visit. We're testing somewhere around 250 people a day through the Murfreesboro site for COVID nasopharyngeal swabs. We're also working all the public health investigation that goes along with all the cases and their contacts 7 days a week. We're continuing to do that. We have the mask available at both health departments. These are cloth masks provided by the state at no charge to anyone who's interested. They can come by. They don't have to get out of the car, just drive by either of our sites. And we've also given them out to some community partners who've been offering those throughout the community to make sure everybody who needs a cloth mask can have them. And we are doing that 5 days a week at both health departments, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. Just pull up there and tell them how many in your family, and we'll get you the mask you need. The governor is still recommending testing anyone who has any concern or doubt about if they've come in contact. So there's no symptoms, no restrictions. Anybody can come for testing. We ask that you call before you do. That way we can give you a better time to come. At some points during the day, we'll have all the parking spots filled. So we try to do it where you'll wait the least amount of time if you call us first. So that's the best way for the public to get a COVID test if they are interested or feel worried and need to have that. We continue the latest numbers today that came out at 2 o'clock. Our positivity rate, that's the positive cases to total number of tests completed, continues to show a downward trend. We're at about 9%. At our peak, we were around 12%. So we're continuing, even though you see a lot of positive case numbers, that raw data number that comes out at 2 o'clock, that's not the full picture, because that we're testing a whole lot more people than we had been previously when we were just testing people with symptoms. So we're testing a lot of people. And we have 462 that are recovered of that number, which is 1,063 cases. So that leaves us with about 600 active cases out of the nearly 12,000 people that we have tested. So I think continuing to do our social distancing, masking, and that will help keep this under control. Come and get tested if you have any concerns or questions, or just call us if we can help at all. But that was just a short little update, kind of a lot of what we were doing last time we talked. Just a few things had changed, and I wanted to take this moment just to update you guys.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Did anyone from Health and Ed have any questions for Ms. Garrett? No, I see no questions. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and all the hard work that you and your staff are going through. I can't imagine what an average day is like at the health department right now. So just want you to know how much we appreciate all of you and your staff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back and do an approval of the minutes, and then we'll get an update from the mayor on community care.
Madam Chairman, find the minutes to be in order and move without objection for their approval.
Do we have a second? Okay. You call the roll for us?
Commissioner Phillips? Aye. Commissioner Gourley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely? Commissioner Cook? Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Chairman Allen?
Yes, thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Very quickly, just an update on community care, our nursing facility. Last week we opened up our daycare facility, which is in a separate building. We had opened it up just briefly for employees' children, but we went ahead feeling that it was okay as long as we took the temps, asked all the questions of the parents. So it's fully open. The daycare facility is for all those who live in that area out on County Farm Road. Good news, last week we received 3 grants, 2 federal grants, 1 state grant. One state grant was $150,000. The state grant was, the second federal grant was $390, and then we took out a PPP loan from the government. We won't have to pay it back, hopefully, because as long as we can show that it goes towards the criteria that's listed in there. It was 1.29 million, which is really good, because since we've been closed and you lose patients, because they expire, you can't get out and recruit to bring in new to fill those beds. So the numbers have been plummeting just because of, it's a nursing facility. So this comes at a good time. Commissioner Cook serves on that board as well. So that was just a recent update. We're doing fine since last week. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Ms. Nolan, are you doing the special projects report for us? I can't hear you. You're muted.
I do not think that there is a special projects report for you tonight.
Okay. All right, we will skip special projects. All right, school board, the main event. You guys are on.
All right, our first is a budget amendment. This amendment moves $177,500 in already budgeted pay and $30,726 in the related benefits for a total of $208,226 in classified hourly staff to the budget lines. Items were as needed. Most of the funds are coming from regular EAs and bus aides, which were used to cover SPED and alternative EAs. Other items in the amendment cover implementation of the new attendance system and changes due to the experience of the approved new employees. So no money, no extra money, just moving money around to cover. Motion to approve the amount of $208,226 in already budgeted classified staff funds to the various budget line items as presented.
Any questions from Mr. Spurlock on this? We are going to need to take each one of these individually. Sometimes we try to group the ones that we can. There are none of these that can be grouped. So, any questions on that? Commissioner Gourley?
Yes. The last few words of that is due to the experience approved for the new employees. Could you elaborate what that experience is?
Yes, sir. We have a lot of turnover, and when we some come in, they've had experience. They transfer in from another system or maybe within our system, and the experience level of the one that comes in is greater than the one that exited us.
Okay, so this is more of a classification type of thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Moving that money in makes sense, and I know we do this every year, but there are probably going to be questions tonight that we normally don't ask. But $208,000 is coming from where, and why was those actually over budgeted?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. A lot of times, and it's coming from our regular educational. Some of it's coming from our regular educational assistants, EAs, and some of it's coming from our bus EAs and other line items. The biggest one that stands out is the regular education assistants with the funds available there. A lot of times we have a hard time hiring, and quite frankly, in the last couple of years, with the economy being the way it is, we may not hire initially. We may not hire at all. We may hire during the first 3 months, and we may lose them. So there's a gap in employment time there, and also there are some voids at times.
So,
Yes.
one follow-up, that 208 will probably be in those line items for next year.
Correct.
So what we're moving out will be still in those line items.
Right. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gourley, do you have a question?
I was just going to make a motion to approve this request.
Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook? Yes. Commissioner Ely? Yes. Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gourley?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips? Chairman Allen?
Yes, thank you. Item 2.
The next one is the cafeteria, the centralized cafeteria fund that you should have in front of you. The Fund 143, and the centralized cafeteria fund is used to account for the cafeteria operations in each of our schools. And please note, on the revenue side, there's no budgeted local taxes that support the operation of this fund. It's USDA funds from the federal government, as well as the meal charges that make up the revenue side of this budget. Looking at those first few line items on the revenue side for the lunch and breakfast payments, currently the board approved meal charges for breakfast. It's $1.50 for a student, and for an adult it's $2 for breakfast at one of our cafeterias. For lunch, it's a $2.75 per meal for pre-K through 5th grade. Then it goes up a quarter to $3 for 6th grade through 12th. And an adult meal there at the cafeteria is $3.80. And for holiday meals, they charge $5 on holidays for like visitors. But that is the breakdown on per meal charge that makes up those revenue line items at the top, as well as the a la carte sales, just individual things like ice cream or candy, something that's additional above the meal that's provided. Moving down, you can see we have the USDA lunch reimbursements and the commodities. And that brings us to a budget for revenue for the next fiscal year of $19,878,38. Moving into the expenditure side, does anybody have any questions? It's a pretty straightforward on the revenue side. Like I said, no local revenue. Yes, sir.
We are discussing the 2021 budget. This is not a budget amendment, but the new budget for the coming year.
Yes, sir, this is correct. It's on that second agenda item. This is the proposed fiscal year 2021 centralized cafeteria budget for Fund 143.
And this primarily is a pass-through.
Well, it's
in the sense of Rutherford County funding.
That's correct. There's no local funding as far as tax levy. The local revenues you see is, like I said, the charges, the meal charges. Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you.
Moving into the expenditures, we see in the supervisor line item, that's 2 people. But it's right after this page right here. For each of the funds, the budgets for this next fiscal year, I placed a tab in front of that budget, so for easy reference. But moving down into the line items of expenditure, we have in 105 that is 2, a supervisor and director. Below that is 2 bookkeepers. 165 makes up 467 personnel. That is 115 full-time and 346 part-time. That includes our cafeteria managers and cafeteria staff for all of our cafeterias in the school system. And 189 other salaries and wages. That is 6 field supervisors and a person that also processes the free and reduced applications. That's 6 people in that line item, 189. That makes up a total labor of 477 full-time or total employees, 131 full-time, 346 part-time. Moving into the benefits, you can see very, very modest increases in that. And I will point out that that increase included a 2% pay increase that was approved at the beginning of this. Of course, with whatever, we have adjusted it to the 1.5%, of course, if it was passed tonight at that's presented to you for the general purpose school fund. But, so right now, if you were doing the math on that, that would give them a 2% increase, but once again, the board voted last Thursday to say we're at 1.5% for the employees as presented to you. Moving down, do you have a question, sir?
I was just going to make a comment. I asked for this last year, and we have you are the new Assistant Superintendent for Finance, and under the 189 items, I know that's a required line item that you're required to have, but if in the future, and I may not even be on health and ed this time next year, but for everyone's benefit, under other salaries and wages, you did a good explanation. That's 6 field supervisors. But if you could put an asterisk by that in future budgets, all the 189 items, and put a footnote down there as to what those are, that would be much appreciated, and it would avoid me and others having to ask questions and take up time in a public meeting. Thank you.
Moving down from the benefits into the non-payroll line items, starting at 307. That's maintenance and repair services for equipment. That's just the cost for miscellaneous repairs of our cafeteria equipment. Maintenance on the 590, maintenance through BOE transfer. That is when our school maintenance employees that are paid out of the general purpose school fund, when they perform work for the cafeteria fund at the cafeteria equipment, we then reimburse the general purpose school fund, as the state and the federal government allows us to do, for their time as they work on the cafeteria equipment. And that $20,000 is budgeted for their time. We added this year $2,500 postage to assist with to give some funding for our cafeteria managers, for mailing out notices to parents for delinquent meal balances, if we're trying to step up our efforts to collect on outstanding meal balances. The 354, that is actually, I brought that up. That is cost of transporting processed commodities from vendors like Tyson, JTM, and Nick's Barbecue. That is trued up. The $150,000 is more in line with what is actually being spent out of that line item. So instead of just repeating the 12, I increased that to be more in line with actual expenditures for the year at $150. Travel, that is in county travel. That is for daily bank deposits and supervisor travel and moving inventory. That's done by the cafeteria employees between our cafeterias. Other contracted services, 399, that's mainly Cooper's Refrigeration and Jerry Potts for the maintenance of our 6 nutrition vans, as well as when there's specialized needs on repairing the equipment that our maintenance employees, they're not licensed to work on those, so we outsource that. Food preparation supplies, that's mainly Palmer's, American Paper and Twine. And then 422, that would be food supplies from Murfreesboro Milk, IWC. That of course, as you see, that's actually the actual food that is prepared. Office supplies, that's just pretty self-explanatory on that. It's, we typically order from A to Z, some Amazon orders. Uniforms, holding steady, is once again cafeteria worker uniforms. And the USDA commodities and line item at 469, that's just an in and out, that revenues expenditures equal. That's the cost for processing commodities. 499, that is just some miscellaneous supplies for each of our cafeteria sites. You can imagine they're like little restaurants, so they require having, different types of supplies that a restaurant would have. In-service staff development, that's just our staff training, that they have their state conference, and obviously if it's probably going to be virtual if it's, this summer or fall. But I budget for what they've been utilizing to train the staff. Other charges, this is a new one, the $20,350. That is put in place we're having I'm adding 2 different software items. One is it's called automation. It's for scanning invoices electronically. Right now we get a large amount of paper invoices when we're ordering food and non-food items for the cafeteria. What this will do is it will allow us, right now we're hand keying in those invoices, which is a very time-consuming process that, of course, is left open for error when you're hand keying. This will allow us to go to a barcode scanning system that it will expedite this process and also decrease or pretty much eliminate, operator error with a if they are keying in incorrectly. The other item in that line item of 599 is we are, as part of the school board's 3-year strategic plan, we are going to be launching electronic timekeeping in the school system this coming fiscal year. We are looking at incorporating Gourley Reagan, which is timekeeping on demand, which is the software product that the county general fund currently uses. We're going to be utilizing that software, which has already been used on the county side here by their employees for at least a decade. And then, of course, the audit services is we're rebidding that now for audit services of to do the audit of the cafeteria. Equipment on 710, we reduced that. We reduced that by $200,000. We could definitely utilize that additional $200,000 that we cut from this budget for equipment, but we reduced that based on what's going on right now with the shutdown. Obviously, that impacts the revenue side with the meal charges. We've reduced that to basically make sure that we have as balanced a budget as we can once you budget against fund balance. And as you can see, this increase is around 3% increase from last year, and it leaves adequate fund balance in the budgeted ending fund balance for this fund. Does anyone have any questions on this fund's budget?
Any questions for Fund 143, centralized cafeteria?
Madam Chairman, this is Robert Stevens.
Yes.
I had a question about the fund balance. It looks like last year ended with $3.3 million in the fund balance, and it's projected to go to about 1.8 at the end of this year. Is this a sustainable system, or is some kind of correction needed to make this fund balance long term?
What happened today? Good question. What happened when the reason you saw the drop in this is when the school shut down in March. That we went from serving full option in cafeteria to the emergency feeding curbside services. This decreased the revenue for this fiscal year, and of course changed the fund balance for the beginning fund balance for this year. Back to your question, is sustainable? My hope is that we are back in serving, with full open schools and full open cafeteria operations in the fall. But if not, then we would definitely have to adjust accordingly if that's not the case.
So if no tax revenue goes into this fund, how do you adjust it?
It would be federal, but of course we would have to look on the expenditure side as well.
Commissioner Stevens, I don't know if this helps you or not, but part of what Mr. Bodary was saying is that when you make the shift that we did from the student population that you were serving inside the school to what they're doing now, part of what you've lost is that discretionary revenue, that additional revenue that you would have gotten for ice cream and potato chips or whatever the healthy version of that snack is now in cafeterias. So those folks who were giving you funds kind of above and beyond that are not part of this federal program, that was padding your revenue. And those are the people we don't have any longer. And so that's the point that I think he's saying, is that if we needed to cut even more bare bones, we would have to look at our expenditures as it related to that loss, that potentially permanent loss in revenue.
And one of the things we've got to keep aware of is that we're required we can only keep 3 months of our ending fund balance for that, which in turn was challenging when we hit that period of time.
Yes, I'd forgotten about that, but you're right. This is a very restricted fund, and so there are limits on what that fund balance can be.
The maximum fund balance for this fund per the federal guidance is 3 months of operating expenditures. And the thought behind that was if you have this large fund balance, then, you should either, cut meal costs, or you should, invest more in equipment in what, to better increase, what you serve. And that was fine for normal years, but this year proved when we had the shutdown, we noticed, Ms. Spurlock and I noticed in other counties, they were talking about giving bonus payment to the employees that were doing the emergency sites. And I was wondering, how did they do this? Because they're under the same federal requirement as we are to have a maximum of 3 months of budget expenditures in their fund balance. So when I started pulling the audited numbers for those other counties, I realized real quick they were ignoring that federal requirement. There were counties that had cafeteria funds with 120% of their annual expenditures in their fund balances. And going forward, my thought, and we've had this discussion, is that it would be good if the federal government would look at changing that requirement to 6 months, up to 6 months, for if something like this ever happened again, we would have operating funds to make sure we continued those emergency feeding sites. Those things have proved very, very used in the last 3 months. We've served a substantial amount of meals out of those emergency feeding sites. I hope that answers your question.
And just in case, we may even, who knows what, we hope that things pick up and there's no issues, but there could be, that they call a second wave. We hope not, but we've got to be prepared for all those things.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Stevens?
Well, it does. I guess just thinking ahead, what do you cut to make it work if the revenue isn't there?
Do you have any thoughts?
Labor.
We've been able to maintain positions, but what you're saying is that we might not be able to maintain positions?
Right.
Shutdowns of schools. Yes.
Any other questions?
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Commissioner P?
Well, the money that we're spending giving the meals away, I'll say that, maybe that's not the correct verbiage, but will we be able to be reimbursed from the federal government for that or from the state?
Yes, please.
That's a good question, Mr. P. Or Commissioner P. That we are receiving $3.50 per meal for lunches through the USDA, and we're also receiving reimbursement for the breakfast that we serve. And we have been keeping, in my office, we've been keeping a spreadsheet and keeping close track of the cost to the county of this, in the cafeteria fund, of the emergency feeding sites. So then we analyze to say, okay, this is how much the USDA is reimbursing us for those meals provided, and this is the additional cost in labor that's over and above what the USDA is reimbursing. And we will have that. We just stopped the emergency feeding sites this last Friday, so by this Friday, I will have that spreadsheet completed with showing this is how much additional costs over the USDA reimbursement that it cost our cafeteria funds, and I'll submit that paperwork to the mayor's office to be included in a FEMA emergency grant for reimbursement for those costs that were not covered with the per meal USDA reimbursement.
Good question. Did that answer your question, Commissioner P?
It did. Thank you, Doug.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Great discussion. Anything else for this group? Okay, I'm ready to entertain a motion on the Centralized Cafeteria Fund 143.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Call the roll for us.
Commissioner Cook? Commissioner Ely? Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gourley,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips, Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Chairman Allen.
Yes, thank you. Okay, item 3, capital projects.
The next budget is in front of you on your packet, and of course, it's got the cover sheet, Education Capital Projects Fund, Fund 177. Of course, this is the fund that is used to account for capital improvements and renovations for our existing school buildings, facilities of the school department. Behind that cover page is the revenue and expenditure budget. I was going to go over this quickly and then turn this over to Trey Lee so he can talk about the individual capital improvement requests. As you can see on the revenue side of this fund, we have budgeted in here the 7.5 cents that is current of property tax that is currently appropriated this fiscal year. Work with Lisa Nolan to get what growth that would bring, and I believe there's a small amount more growth on the rate, property tax rate since this estimate, but at this point, what we're looking at is property tax revenue of $7,287,066. It's a small amount of business tax and $40,270 of $196,000, giving revenue for this fund of $7,483,066. Dropping down below that to the expenditure side, we see trustee commissions budgeted at $160,000, with the remainder of that 7.5 cent tax levy going to 335 maintenance and repair of service of buildings of $7,323,066. On the next page, you will see at the very top of this detailed capital project request, and this is a multi-year, as you can see, a 3-year requests of capital improvements. You see the 2021 column. The next column over is the 2021-22, followed by the 2022-23, and then on the far right column of that first page, and this continues for the next couple, you see what came out, what was brought out of the most prioritized projects for 2021 fiscal year. And at the very top, you see the $7,323,066. That is the number. That's the number from the detailed line item budget on the previous page for the expenditures for the maintenance and repair services. And if anyone does anyone have any questions of this so far? Otherwise, I'm going to let Mr. Lee come up and talk about the actual individual improvements. Yes, sir.
So the far right column is the number. Is that what you propose to expend for 2021?
That is correct. The very top and below that will be the detail of what makes up that $7,323,066. And that number matches our detailed fund budget on the page before.
Mr. Gourley, let me try and add a little bit of clarity to this. Last year, this is the same format that you all saw last year. The first column is the Rutherford County Schools deferred maintenance. When Mr. Spurlock and myself began our new roles, one of the first things that he and I undertook was to do an analysis of all of our school systems and where we stood with deferred maintenance. That is what this first column is. Last year, if you'll recall, when we had this meeting, y'all saw this for the first time. It was a little over 25 or 30 million, and I'm going off memory. This year, we've been able to complete that analysis, and right now we're sitting at 84 million deferred maintenance. What we discussed last year at this meeting was looking at these deferred maintenance items and looking at one possibility of being able to chip away at them over a 3-year program, possibly looking at it like capital project, building programmers, bond money. That was one way to look. So we did it over 3 years. So basically what you see is this $84 million in your first line item. If we were to have the funds to spread it out over 3 years and get caught up, that would be the money that we would be looking for each year. So the first year would be $35 million, the second year would be $23 million, and 2022, 2023, it would be $26 million. Along the way, if you look down there near the very bottom, is an LED lighting program, which is $16,500,000. If we were to convert all of our schools to LED lighting, we could save on our electrical bill alone when the project was completed somewhere between $3 and $4 million. That savings could be used to go toward the debt payment for the funds. That was presented to the school board. Recently, we brought in a consultant, which is another way to look at this, getting access to those funds to use to help to pay for deferred maintenance. And it's an ESCO. Williamson County, Murray County, some of the folks around us are doing it. And basically the short version is, and that's not why we're here tonight, but the short version is they're using these ESCOs to get this deferred payment taken care of like a bank. And basically what they're doing is going in and reaping that electrical savings from the LED lighting program and using those funds to pay for the upgrades. We haven't gotten to either one of those programs to come before you tonight. So what we're dealing with is, last year y'all increased us from basically 5 cents to 7.3. This 7.3066 is the same number that you all, same exact thing that we looked at last month. I've made no changes. And I think during that meeting we had discussed a couple of them. The central magnet HVAC, that's a priority, that's on the list. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of the big ones. The Buchanan Elementary Sewer System, another $1.5 million. There's, another $750,000 roughly in roofing. There's another couple of big hitters, $1.4 million with the principals. And then sprinkled in through there, and I'm not being flippant, you have to have some smaller items to go in with just the large. And basically what I've done is analyzed each and every one of these items and come down to the 7.3. And I think it was Commissioner Phillips that said in last month's meeting, we hope that we can fund this 7.3. But we understand it may not be. If you are to vote tonight, it would be 7.3 based on the projects that I've got before you. And it's the same list as last time. If you are to defer, wait a little further into the budget season before you decide. If you give us the number that you think you can manage, then I will adjust this to meet that number. In other words, I'm going to look at these items and very reluctantly, or to the best of my ability, I'm going to reprioritize these to whatever that number is that we have in capital projects funding. Does that make sense? And I'll be glad to answer any question on any line item that you have.
I think there are a lot of things we don't know. I was talking to Director Nolan earlier today, and we won't get the numbers. So far, we have fared so-so. The state as a whole has not fared real well. The legislators is back in session. We don't know what they're going to do. We won't get the numbers for this month until June the 20th, which will be a few days before we vote on the whole final budget. So there's a lot of unknowns right now. I'm the one that I think stated that I would like to keep this because maintenance to me, preserving what you have, is extremely important. If you have a house and it's worth $150,000, you want to preserve that equity in that house. If you let the roof leak and all of a sudden you've got $50,000 worth of water damage, you don't have a $150,000 house anymore. And it's the same way with our schools. We've got to preserve. So I'm in favor of doing the budget committee after we do whatever we do tonight. Commissioner P. and others, Commissioner Allen, Commissioner Stevens, and others are going to be taking another look at this with more information than we have tonight, budget-wise. But I have to agree that most of the things in here are reasonable requests. I see $500,000 for secondary backup server. But what have we just experienced? The total dependence on everything online. I mean, everything's been going online from what we buy. I've gotten more Amazon orders in the last month or somewhere else than I've done in the last 3 years. All depended on an internet connection, Zoom meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, that's my feeling is that, yeah, we need to continue to do the maintenance. Now, you may find my attitude flipped when we get to the next budget, but right now, that's this commissioner's feelings.
Commissioner Blair?
A couple of points of clarity. Capital projects are repairs and renovation. It's not new construction. And I think in the past, we've had some, maybe not on the commission, but maybe the general public was wondering about that classification. So again, a point of clarity. The other point would be that this fund is basically property tax. And is there any reason, Ms. Nolan, that we have a concern about the property tax at this time? Because it's not based on sales tax, it's based on home ownership. Do you feel pretty solid about the income that we've collected so far from our property tax?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The property tax is one of the most solid numbers that we have.
Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me try to kind of back.
No, sir, it's asking you to continue at $7,323,066, which is the far right column. If you take all of the items in the far right, they will add up to $7,323,066.
All the other stuff, like for
It's
21, 22.
That's all information. It's all information.
Any other questions?
Madam Chairman, this is Robert Stevens.
Yes.
Had a couple of questions. When we get to the next budget, are we going to be looking at building any new schools this year? I think I read somewhere where they were going to put that off for a year to help us out, or that was the proposal. Is that correct?
We're going to take one step at a time, Commissioner. We're going to go with our budgets we have here, and we'll be looking at our building program later on.
Well, it seems like to me if we're not going to be building a whole new school and borrowing that much money while we've got an opportunity, it might be good for a one-time increase in maintenance expenses to try to get ahead on a few of these things while we have an opportunity to do that. But if we're going to be building a whole new school, that probably would work. And so my question for Mr. Lee and for Director Spurlock would be, in addition to the things that are on this list already, what would be your next items that you would like to see if we could do more on maintenance this year instead of building a new school?
Well, we're in a conundrum there in terms of, we've already got, primarily the last 2 weeks, we've got information back. We're going to add over 1,000 new kids next year. With our new online registration, it's making it a little bit more easier for us to determine what our growth is looking like. So I'm not saying that we're not going to be requesting our building program. I'm just saying currently we would like to get through our general purpose school fund, because I know that's a challenge in itself. Operations, is always something that's there before us. So I don't know if I answered your question well, but I'm trying to.
Well, if we don't do the new school, what would be the items on the maintenance wish list that you would like to add?
Oh, there's a plethora of them. I mean,
I see all of them on there, but I'm trying to help you get something
right.
else.
Yes, sir. I understand.
What are the things you want me to advocate for?
Right.
I guess to try and answer your question, Commissioner Stevens, if I had a crystal ball and y'all had an unlimited pocketbook and we weren't going to build a school this year, I'd ask you for everything in the first line. Adds up to about $35 million. That's, if you broke it down into 3 years, that's the largest of the worst. They're everything if it's in the second year, it means that something in the first year is in worse shape than it is. Does that make sense? If I can put it off for 3 years, it's not as bad as something I need this year. So that's why we broke it down into 3 years and tried to analyze it. But to answer your question, it'd be $35 million. And then if you say that's not the number, tell me the number and I'll rework that list to get there. But if I'm answering your question, it would be the first row and $35 million.
Well, if you just had a few million more, I see there's lots of HVAC systems that need to be worked on and all kinds of other projects too. I just wanted to know which ones you thought were the most important if you had an opportunity to add a few of these items to your list.
Let me answer that question another way again, and maybe I can answer it better. If you tell me how much money you think you can give us, whether it's $7 million or $10 million or $11 million, I'll go back to that first row and pick out the ones that are the worst that are in the most need that will get me to your number. Does that answer your question?
It does, and if we're not going to borrow, 30, 40, 50 million for a school, but we can afford to do 5 or 10 in maintenance, I think it would be wise for us to go ahead and try to get ahead and get something done. If we can afford to do that in our debt service fund, which it looks to me like we have plenty of excess in that fund to do some maintenance if we don't build a new school. So I just want to be sure we're getting something done while we have an opportunity to do a little bit more if we can.
Yes, sir. And there again, I think the best way to answer your question is if we knew what that number was, and whether it's 3 million more or 4 million more, I'll go back to that first row and I'll pick out the ones that are the worst to get us to that number. Commissioner.
Commissioner Gourley?
Yes, I think there's one problem with Commissioner Stevens' thoughts right now. New school funding is done by a bond issue. It's borrowed money. We're not taking it out of, the only thing we're using our property tax for is to pay the debt service, eventually repay that. So we don't know, and I'm not on budget, but budget committee right now probably don't know quite yet what they're going to need in terms of money to balance the overall budget of Rutherford County, because no doubt other revenues are going to be down. And so right now, trying to take out of property tax, or just because we're not deficient right now in property tax, but we don't know all these other taxes, sales tax, excise tax, all these other taxes are probably going to be down, and we're going to need property tax unless we want to raise property tax. If we want to raise property tax to do this, then we need to say, okay, we need to take this from 7.5 to 15 cents and see what the taxpayers say about that. Another 7.5 cents. I forget exactly what we raised last year, but we got quite a bit of feedback every time, And right now, during this time when a lot of people are out of work, and as I talked to Director Nolan this morning, I as a commissioner, okay, but I've got a lot of constituents out there that are not so okay. They're either drawing unemployment right now, or waiting on their job to come back and hope it comes back. So I'm going to be real hesitant on raising taxes. Now, keeping this fund where it is right now at 7.5, I am for that. But I'm hesitant to go beyond that. Remember, we significantly increased this fund, and if the economy picks back up next year, I'm not against increasing this fund, because like I said, Commissioner Blair pointed out, building new schools and preserving what we have are two different things. One's done out of borrowed money, the other's done out of property tax. And so I'm for leaving this alone right now. And that's not to say that if come January of next year or February, when everybody's supposed to have their property taxes paid and we know what the economy's doing, and we've got, Director Nolan says, we've got an extra $50 million in fund balance here that we can have some discretionary spending. Maybe we ought to spend 10 or 15, $20 million on renovating and bringing some of our school repair projects up. But right now, in May of 2020, when we're not sure where we're going, I'm not for it.
So if I got you right, Commissioner Gourley, you're good with the 7.5 cents right currently. That's what I'm saying. So I think we would agree with that.
And that's all we're asking tonight. That's what we came in here. It's just status quo, number-wise.
Well, and I'd like to make an observation, and please, both of you, correct me if I'm wrong. I know one of the things that we asked all the departments to do was to present, initially it was a wants versus a needs budget, and then it was a what can you live with budget. On maintenance, these are not wants, they're only needs. In deferred maintenance, we know that there's a cost to that, and so this is beyond their what can you live with. This is we're gambling, because mechanical devices are subject to failure at any time for any reason. And so we're gambling that the things that we think are in worse shape are going to break first, and that we've got time to get those fixed. So ideally, we need $85 million to take care of this list. And that's just what we need as a snapshot today in order to do our maintenance. So the point that I was saying in terms of correcting me if I'm wrong, this is not just even a needs list. This is we hope this is all we need this year list. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It'd be like last year when we had the chiller at Blackman, we thought was going to last another 3 to 5 years.
Right.
We had to come back and amend money and spend $285,000 to get that fixed. I'm hoping this year we don't have that. I really am. But you're correct. I mean, that's what the last line is to hold pat.
Commissioner Gourley.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve this capital improvements budget as presented.
Very good. Do we have a second? Commissioner Ely. You call the roll.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook? Yes. Commissioner Ely? Yes. Commissioner Gammon? Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gourley?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips? Chairman Allen?
Yes, thank you. Okay, item 4.
Hey, Trey.
You hear me, D? Pass these out. One of those. Yeah.
Ready? Okay. Doug's going to go over the revenue part of our 141.
I did a quick synopsis and I'll run it. You don't have this in front of you. I'm sure that Lisa Nolan has looked at this with you before. This is the revenue side of the general purpose school fund. Obviously, we're going to focus in on the expenditure side tonight, but I just wanted to run through this and give you a snapshot of and summary of the currently $408,033,345 that we'll be budgeting for revenue for the general purpose school fund. Of that amount, $87,603,513 of that estimate is made up of property taxes, which, when you look at the revenue as a whole, that makes up 21% of all revenues in the general purpose school fund.
Can you repeat those numbers again, please?
Yes, sir. The total revenue that we're budgeting at this moment, and this includes with the May BEP estimates, the revenue in the general purpose school fund as it stands right now is budgeted at $408,033,345. Just a summary breakdown of that number is $87,603,513 of that is county property taxes, which makes up 21% of all that revenue. Local option sales tax, we have budgeted slightly below the original budget for this fiscal year, $66,885,000, which that number makes up 16% of all the revenue for this fund. Wheel tax, we have budgeted $4,350,464, and that makes up right around 1% of the revenue for the general purpose school fund. Business tax, $2,327,980, and that once again is around 1% of our estimated revenues for this fund. We have budgeted $190,000 for local option mixed drink tax, and that's less than half of 1% of the revenue for the fund. We have some miscellaneous, charges for current services with marriage license at $12,000 to bring in other local revenues of $1,728,370. And that brings, for all total local revenues that make up the revenue of the general purpose school fund, is $163,274,327. And what I'm reading from is what I gave to Health and Ed the last time. The only thing that's changed is a slight increase to BEP. But that total local revenues makes up 40% of budgeted revenue in the general purpose school fund. Our BEP funds and state funds, we received $243,379,018. That's what we have budgeted of state revenue for next fiscal year. That makes up 60%, just right by 59.5% of our revenue. So obviously with 58% of our revenue coming from BEP funds, we are very interested in what the State General Assembly is doing right now. And what's left, we have budgeted $1,230,000 of federal revenue in the General Purpose School Fund. The majority of our federal revenue is, of course, goes through the Federal Projects Fund for the school. We have just 2 items that go through the General Purpose School Fund budgeted, and that is $550,000 of IDEA, some special education money, and $680,000 of ROTC salary reimbursement from the federal government for our ROTC programs. We round that out with $150,000 of transfers from indirect federal projects and school nutrition reimbursement, and that brings us to the total $408,033,345 total that started with.
So, from what you're telling us, you're expecting to have a $55 million fund balance this time next year?
No, sir. It's a
480 minus for your proposed budget.
425?
834.
Yeah.
17 million 800, $17,834,328. Deficit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Right.
You're proposing a $425 million budget, and you're going to have $480 million in revenue. How do you come out with the deficit?
$408 million.
Oh, 408.
Not 480. No, 408.
408 million.
Now, while we're
Thank
on
you.
that, this is the revenue part. There is a contingency on there at one, and that's where we left off in, I guess, with the governor's 2%. Now, we're not proposing at 2%. However, there will be some funding. So if that goes away, then that amount will go away, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we look at this right here. Okay. So what he's giving you on the revenue side also will impact on the expenditure side. Okay. All right. First of all, I gave you a sheet, and I think it's always good to go there and look over historical over time of the per pupil expenditures for 140 of our school districts across the state of Tennessee. You will find Rutherford County, I think it's on the 4th page, down to the bottom at 107. And you can see it, that the historical picture over time. 2019 was 8,929 per student. Now that does change over time, predicated on your growth. And one of the things we feel like we do is we do a pretty good job with what we have in adding over 1,000 students. I did tell you currently, and we're just into it a little bit, that we've added new students. Now, of course, that's going to fluctuate somewhat, but we're close to 1,100. But there will be some movement. Some will leave and some will stay. But we're very confident we'll have over 1,000 beginning of this school year. Now, looking at the object code 71100. And the very first one, I know that's got a lot of perked up a lot of people when they see the number 68. That 68 includes, if you'll look over at 71200, and if you'll look at line item 429, it's instructional supply. I'm looking at the wrong one. Let me look at this again. What page? 7210. 7210. Let me look at it again. 7210. It's in when you look at that 7210, it's line item. Well, I can't find it, buddy. 138. Line item 138 on 72210. Am I right on that? Am I missing a page here? Yeah, 72210, line item there. There's 36 positions that are instructional technology. Actually, we call them technology coach, that we're going to be moving from that line item up to the line item 116 of regular ed. So that gives you 36 of those 68. The other 32 will be growth positions, okay? So that gives us a grand total of 70.9 there. The 2.9% is the EAs. Our EAs are really hourly, and the position amount is determined by the number of hours that are increased. Okay, so we've got 68 regular ed positions, and we've got 2.9 of our EAs, ESLs, including our ESLs. That gives us 70.9, but we also have 3 assistant principals. That gets us up to 73.9. And we have additional classified, which gets us up to 76.9. So that's where that all comes in. It's clerical and classified all coming together there. Okay. All right, going on down there, the first one there on the first page on 71,100, 336, you see the 778% increase. What that is aligned with is the 722 on that same line item down below. 722 says instructional equipment. You'll notice that 62% decrease. What that is we used to buy our band instruments, and we still do. However, we've noticed that if we can save a lot of them by having work done on them. So that's where we've put in more money for repair and service of these band equipment instead of purchasing those. So overall, if you look at the total increase on 71,100, there is an increase from the previous year of 2.2%. Any questions on the first page?
I would like a good explanation of why we need to, under the current environment, increase assistant principals. I mean, I've worked in government, and I've worked in Fortune 500 corporations, and sometimes it gets around to you just do more with what you got.
Normally, you're right, and what we've got, some of these are half-time that will be going to full-time because of the increase in the enrollment of the schools. So when we get over 500, 500 is a number in which we add an additional position. I mean, it's challenging. I mean, we've cut this down. We could have really, truthfully needed more than 3, but we did go in, and in fact, this has been cut by 1 since we brought the first budget to you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Ms. Spurlock, remind us what the student population overall is probably going to be this next year. You told us 1,100.
As far as overall, we're probably more likely about 47.7, somewhere in that neighborhood, give or take a few.
That makes us what, 4th in the state, even without the city of Murfreesboro's?
Right.
Student?
We're already larger than Hamilton County.
And I remember some statistics in the past that you've shared, or maybe Mr. Odom, that the number of personnel to administrators was extremely high number per compared to the rest of the state.
We currently have about 132 with our population, and compare that to Sumner County, which is probably about 20,000 or more less than us. They have 1 less than we do. So, we're one of the things that I'm very proud of is that our administrative staff is not, is not large.
Do we have any high school other than Eagleville and Holloway that doesn't have at least a 2,000 student population? Well, I guess Rockvale had opened up at 1,750.
Currently, their projected enrollment is a little over 2,000 this coming year.
Proceed.
Okay. Second page, alternative instruction. The one that stands out, I guess, is the instructional supply material. And this is primarily through increased, the alternative schools, unlike the regular schools, do not have activity funds where they can raise money. So anything that they need extra, either they got to do, some fundraisers or, donations and things of that nature. So in order to offset some of the challenges they have, we're adding an additional $4,000 there. And the total increase in that object code is 1.7%. Any questions on page 2?
Keep going unless there's Just keep going.
All right, number 3, once again, we look at the special ed position there, the 5 additional ones, the educational assistance SPED, and once again, these are hours now, so these hours is look a little bit different there. The big thing there at the bottom is the $399 other contracted services. You'll notice that's like 1,400% increase. This is for students we have in the school for the deaf. This also is part of some of the litigation that we've had in the last year. And this is also other contracted services. For example, paying for mileage of some of our special ed kids that have to go to services outside our district. So that's for the increase there. Now, as far as the 429 is concerned, this is school related. These things are school related. Some things that we cover for our schools that they don't have the funding for. And when you have about 48 schools now, it makes it a challenge. And then the last one there, other charges, this is for SPED equipment. As we get more and more fragile students, we need more and more equipment to meet their needs of their individual education plan. On to the next page, which also includes this 71,200. You will notice that the final tally there for is increase, budget increase is 4.1%. All right, page 5. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Phillips, will you use your microphone?
Could you re-explain to me the 1,400% increase in contracted services?
Yes, sir, I can.
I'm trying to grasp what you're saying. And
yes, sir. On that is students that we have that are in the school for the deaf, where we're paying the tuition. The tuition for them to meet this, because we don't have the services there, and through arbitration through the IEP process, they were placed there, and we've got to pick up the amount for it. Now, that's not all of it. We also got some litigation that was involved in there, and also some mileage, paying mileage for some students that are in special ed that have to go be transported from one service to another.
Bottom line, in 71,200 is almost 1.4 million.
Yes, sir.
1.4 million increase.
That's correct. Yes, sir. All right, career and technical education is pretty bland. You notice that it's as far as the benefits, the personnel, we've got a 0.3% decrease. The only thing that changes that was increased is the 448. This right here is our new programs that we'll be adding in career and technical education this coming year. It's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, 2 programs, one at Laverne and one at Smyrna High School. We also be adding a biomedical program at Oakland High School. But overall, we decreased that line item there. On the attendance, the first one there is 162. This reflects the increase in personnel that we had in mid-year this past year, and that was the first change that we had in the last about 15 to 20 years, even though we had grown. And I can't tell you how important the attendance people are. We talked about this in our meeting with our school board earlier this year when we got about our projected revenue from our ADM. In our at-risk population, we came back with somewhere like 1,200, and that was a huge deficit for us. So the people in this office went back and they reconciled this to where we got up close to 10,000 students. So without that work, we would be looking at a very deep deficit. The other 399 contracted services, that is for our student management system as we're going along and adding different things there. Overall, in this area, there was a 3.2% increase from the previous fiscal year. All right, page 7 is our health services. Line item 189, other salaries and wages. This is our occupational therapists and our certified occupational therapist assistants. As we add more and more students, like I said, medically challenged students that require this as per their IEP, this requires us to add additional services there in order to make sure we're compliant. Going down, the final total for increase over the previous fiscal year in 72-120 is 2.3%. All right, 72-130, other student support. The 70.4%, that is actually, it was kind of, we originally had our safe school director in line item, what line item was that in?
That was the 105 originally.
105, but the state come back and said they had to be in, it's in 105 now. But it was in what prior to?
It was, they had asked us to do a budget amendment for the grant purposes to put it into, I believe it's the 72 to the regular.
Either way, this reflects, the increase reflects the person's salary, our safe school director. But find out what line item that came out of.
Let's tell you quick. It's out of 72-210, 189, and if you want to elaborate on this for
me.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We had budgeted, we had budgeted in that line item from the 105 supervisor director line item. That's for the director over our Safe School grant program. And of course, he's funded with a state grant for the Safe School program. We originally budgeted him for this fiscal year originally in that 105 audit code. Mm-hmm. The state came back when they awarded our grant, which we brought a budget amendment back to the school board and to the county commission. They wanted us for grant purposes to put him in 72-210, 189 other. Well, I haven't got an answer back yet from the state if they wanted me, because typically you put a supervisor back to the 189. You put a supervisor in 105. We haven't even got our grant yet, final approval for it of the safe schools. So if they make me put him in 189 this year, then I promise he'll stay there. But I will have to just make more notes so school board members and commissioners know this is what the state wants me to report him in, and there it is.
Can you tell us what 189 comprises in under 72-130?
$189, that's our athletic trainers and occupational therapists and CODIS, or occupational therapists we talked about.
I thought the occupational therapists were 189 under health services.
That's it, 72-120. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
72-130, what we're talking about right now. But there's 1.9 million there and 6 position increase. That's other salaries and wages.
That is, tell you what. On 72-130, 189, you have the 6 positions, and 2 of them are athletic trainers. And for one of those, and we'll talk about that here, I guess, in a minute with it. But the other 4 are 504 behavior at-risk education assistants. And that's on the second page of the budget additions. I separated that from the certified on the first page and the classified hourly or salaried on the second page.
Okay, going to the next page over the total for 72-130 was a decrease from the previous fiscal year of 1.9%. All right, 72-210, I think we've already mentioned about the instructional computer personnel, the technology coaches moving over to our 71-100, 116. So that's where that came from. The specialists and material staff, our staff there, that's a decrease there. And this is what I think this is where the 189 you just got through talking about. It previously was in the 189 at 7210, the safe school director.
That was correct.
Okay, so that's where that's coming from. The previous thing that he mentioned on 105 on the previous page, well, this right here is where he originally was in, but that will be coming out for now, and it may go back where it started from.
Depending on the state guidance.
Yeah. All right, moving on down to the next page on the 7210 total. That's a decrease in 25% from the previous fiscal year. All right, the next page, the 72-215 alternative instructional program. That's pretty cut and dry there. The 72-15 total is a decrease in 1.4%. All right, 72-220 special education program. Other salaries and wages. This is an increase of 153.9. This is for the SPED assistant technology that he mentioned. Their assignments are doing not only cognitive testing, but also doing some testing in terms of their physical capacity and working with their deficiency there, but primarily cognitive testing. All right, on the bottom of the page of 72-220 is a negative 3.2% decrease from the previous fiscal year. All right, career and technical education program. This is our personnel here. As you can see, the total there increase from the previous fiscal year is 1.1%. All right, in our technology, 72-250, other contracted services. This includes copy machines. This includes a variety of programs. Microsoft, I think the contract with Microsoft management system, that's in there. Now, the increase from the previous year, obviously, as we update some of these software, and the price goes up with it. On the software 471, you see a decrease of 46.5%. Some of this is what we're going to be covering with our CARES Act. Okay, the other equipment. You see a 43.8% increase This is what we pay on our E-rate, our portion, our 40% portion on the E-rate. They give us 60% and we pick up the 40% on our E-rate. All right, looking over at the total increase from the last fiscal year, this is a 6.4% increase. Adult program, the only thing you see there is the total is the 1.5%. This reflects the entire program, and once again, this can change with the General Assembly's removal of the raise. All right, on the next page of 72,310. Let's look at legal services, 331. You see an additional 12% or $30,000. What this is contracted services because of the increase of litigation in our SPED and because of the number of schools that we've added, 2 additional schools, and the number of students that we added. This is putting an undue burden on our staff attorney who cannot do this in an effective and efficient manner. Therefore, instead of hiring someone, we are looking at doing some billable hours for a SPED trained attorney.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. Under the board, 191, board and
member fees?
Yeah, $150,000. What do you get for that?
Same amount is, that's for the school board's meeting fees. It's the same amount that was set by the county commission.
Right.
Okay, so that is their per diem meeting fees, not some organization meeting fees.
No, they have those, the per diem, and then they also have their member fees, the big part of TSBA. But it's majority of it is the big 99% of it is the per diems.
If I could ask a question. Most of the rest of these items, when it comes to clerical personnel, they've been fairly consistent at 42, 45,000. We come to this, and we've got, it looks like 2 positions, and we're budgeting $142,000 for that.
Yeah, some of it is the raise and the step increases as they get more experience in their position. So when you throw that raise and the step increase in there, then that kind of raises the, we've got a lot of longevity in this area.
We're talking about Ms. Joyce, I understand that, but I just couldn't see the consistency from one of those items to the other items. They're pretty consistent at 42.5.
Right.
And suddenly we come to this and we've got 2 positions and it's 142,000, something like that. Are these non-exempt clerical positions? Yes. Non-exempt clerical positions.
That's correct.
So if you just add those up together, we're talking about $75,000 for a secretary.
Well, administrative assistant, I think is what we reference them as. And then we do have job descriptions. We wouldn't mind sending them to everyone if you need it. We can do that.
I understand, but
I think one of them has actually been there 30 years or 30 plus years or something like that. Yeah.
my concern is that we've got a non-exempt clerical position that's rivaling what we pay a top administrator in some of the schools. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying this is what the number says to me.
Sure.
We've got a non-exempt clerical position that we're paying $75,000 for versus principal, assistant principal. I just, if that's an exempt position, I'm just not 100% sure that I can make sense out of some of that. I understand. I do. I really do. I just couldn't add up
Sure.
45 versus 145.
Okay. All right. The overall 72,310 increase of a 3.6% over the previous fiscal year. All right. The Office of the Superintendent, increase over the previous fiscal year of 1%. All right, 72,410, Office of the Principal.
I have a question. Once
All right.
again, it gets back to this 189.
On what object code?
$317,000 in other salaries and wages.
Mm-hmm.
Can either one of you enlighten me as to?
That would be all of our assistants. You would be in there, Doug, would you not?
Where's
The Office of Assistants, other salaries and wages.
I mean, it's not increasing, but.
Wouldn't it be all of our assistant
are
superintendents?
we in 72?
72,
310?
320.
320, 189. That
That's
gets back to
right.
that other
Office of Superintendent.
thing
That's
again.
you guys.
That's the, oh, no, it's
That's not
the
you?
attorney, staff.
Okay, all right, I've been corrected. It's our staff attorney, and is it the board attorney in there?
No, sir, it's, I'll tell you real quick, 2320. It's our two communications, school communication.
Okay, our
employees,
PIO.
Staff attorney, our paralegal, and then an hourly.
So it's your assistant superintendents, et cetera, it's in that.
No.
Not in this line.
It's not?
Mm-mm.
So it's.
It's our legal department and our PIOs. Mm-hmm. All right. All right, moving on to 72,410, Office of the Principal. The attendance, 162 there. What this is here is, once again, we're talking about hours here. In a lot of our elementary schools, the EAs are part-time EAs. They do part-time EAs and part-time attendance. This is one part of this is taking and making them full-time attendance due to the fact that our funding is very important to us, and there's a lot of mistakes that are being made, and there's a lot of things that we're having to catch on the back end of it. We're very fortunate that sometimes the State Department will tell us that there seems to be something misaligned. However, they don't have to do that. They just remove your money. All right, the next one down at 320, dues and memberships. This is primarily our two programs that we have in the high school at Smyrna High with the Cambridge program, and at Oakland High with the IB program. The overall increase in 72,410 from the previous fiscal year is 5.5%. All right, now we're getting over here to fiscal services. 72,510, 399 other contracted services. This does include the automated timekeeper that Doug had talked about. The overall increase from the previous fiscal year for 72,510 is 2.1%. All right, human resources, 72,520. Other 399, other contracted services. Primarily, this is our recruiting what's caused this to increase is our recruiting software. And in our recruiting software, one of the things we do understand is that we invest in those teachers that we hire, which means that when we interview those teachers, we want to know what type of teacher are we getting. So there is a cognitive test that we give at HR. And this cognitive test, this provides us an opportunity to see the quality that we're getting and who are we investing in. All right, now the other part of it is automation. Now, everything that we're doing, we're trying to be more efficient and more effective. Now, we look at the costs, and obviously it does look like it's increased a lot, but you also look at your return on investment. How much work are we getting done in a certain period of time as opposed to what we were doing prior to handling and passing around the sheets of paper. So that's that increase. Overall, the administrative equipment, once again, a big increase for this, not all, but a big increase for this, 17.5% are copiers. Okay, so we probably need to quit killing so many trees there. Maybe, Dr. Anthony, you listening to me? Okay. All right, so the overall increase of 72,520 from the previous fiscal year is 8.9% increase. All right, the next one is our operation of the plant. One of the big one is other contracted services. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Can you use your microphone, please?
Right.
Thank you.
I bit my tongue, but I've just got to ask it. It
Right.
looks like you've got 3 clerical positions and for $99,000. Back on the other one, we had 2 positions for.
You know, once again, I think you already know the answer. It's the experience. A lot of our HR have a small amount of experience than the other 2 individuals. And when, like, for example, one of the individuals in the superintendent's office, we know Ms. Joy's been there for a long time. We also know that the other lady, Ms. Hopkins, has been in our school system, not quite as long as Ms. Joyce, but she's been in there. Okay. But they're
Entry level versus.
entry level, and I applaud, and quite frankly, I applaud Dr. Anthony because they are new to their position, but they're being very effective at what they're doing, though.
Thank you.
And we may keep them 30 years. All right, operation of plant, the $399 on there, other contracted services. This involves outsourcing some things, including mowing, also other things that maintenance may outsource. I know we were talking about it today, and Mr. Lee told me that, like flooring, carpeting, putting flooring down, carpeting, doing some things like that. We outsource that. And also, when the principals turn in a form at the end of the year, the board requests them to put their, some of their things that they would like to have in their building. And Mr. Lee goes along and he looks at some things that are wants and needs, again, looking at that, and he places in there accordingly. All right, the other one there is $499, other supplies and materials. This too is school related, and this could involve a multitude of different things, anything from fire alarms to you name it, that can fall under that category. The overall increase of 72,610 from the previous fiscal year is 4.6% increase. All right, the maintenance of the plant, this one, the only one that I see there is the maintenance equipment that is increased there, and that includes everything from buffers, the things of that nature, you name it, anything that we need for our schools to run efficiently. That's what that includes. Overall, that entire budget of $72,620 is a 0.7% increase from the previous year. Transportation is a big one. Transportation, looking at vehicle and equipment insurance. This is primarily our activity buses that some of our all of our high schools have them. This is the insurance on those buses. I don't know right offhand. Doug, do you know how many of those activity buses we have?
No, sir, I don't off my head.
Usually every large high school has at least 2 large comprehensive, 2 buses, activity buses. Some have more than that, the smaller ones and things of that nature. The administrative equipment here, the 663.3% increase. In the transportation department, this involves those 2-way radios that we're replacing. Okay, also in here on 315, contract with vehicle owners. This includes additional routes plus a 1.5% pay raise that would be eliminated if the General Assembly eliminates the other pay raises. Okay. Overall, I said 8.3% increase from the previous fiscal year. right, 73,300, that's pretty self-explanatory. Moving over to our preschool program.
Got a quick question, Madam Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner P.
On 72-210,
Right.
we were talking about the radios, two-way radios.
Right.
Does that include this new contract that we've got? Does that include all the radios that the school system will be getting or needing?
Mr. Lee, you still here?
Take a microphone. Thank you.
I want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
It's
It's the two-way radios.
two-way radios on 729 on 710.
Yes, that's our portion. Most of what's being placed on the buses is being covered under the county's number. This is in addition for us, for like base stations and things like that at the main office.
But that include the radios that you'll have for your supervisors or principals, vice principals, that kind of thing?
No.
No, sir, it does not.
Have you got, where have you got that?
We don't.
The schools, and safe schools will provide some, but primarily the schools replace those.
Yeah, the school radios are taken care of by the school. And then as we've been able to the last couple of years, we've been using the Safe Schools money to increase those numbers.
Right, or replace those that are defective.
Does that include the SROs?
Yes, sir, it does. Now, they carry two radios, one for the school and one for the sheriff's department. And we take care of the ones for the school themselves, and they take care of the one for the sheriff's department.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 73,300, like I said, community service, and going to the preschool, 73,400. Looking at that one, the one that sticks out there is the 355 travel, and I'm going to have to ask you to enlighten me again on that one. I keep forgetting on that one there.
It's a small amount, but what it is that is just the supervisor when she travels between the schools, we pay their mileage.
Right, okay. Overall increase of 73,400 is 2.4% increase from the previous fiscal year. All right, regular capital outlay, that's negligible. Education debt service is a negative 32.2%. Moving to page 29, education debt service interest. Any questions? And 99,100 operating transfers. And then the back page. The back page, page 31 of 31, shows the budget, $425,834,328. Just like Doug went over, the revenue was $408,033,345. That leaves us upside down budget of $17,800,983. That's a budget increase from the previous fiscal year of $7,467 and $467,284. Now that's a 1.8% increase. When you compare how far we had to go into our ending fund balance last year compared to this proposed budget this year, you're looking at a total of $100,634 difference. Now, once again, going back to this budget we have right in front of you, this could change with if the General Assembly comes in and cuts the raises. We would keep our step raises. However, the 1.5% for the classified, the 1.5% for the certified, and the 1.5% for the bus contractors would be eliminated.
Commissioner Blair?
Could we have those numbers?
Yes, sir. If the General Assembly cut the raises, our revenue would be $405,822,345. Our budget we would propose would be $421,575,519. That would be a deficit of $15,753,174 with a projected ending fund balance to expenditure of 5.53%. Yes, sir. As opposed to 4.99%. And the overall, if that was to occur, the overall increase from the previous fiscal year would be 0.9%. And the amount would be, do you have that on there, Doug? The total amount increase? 3 million? Do you have that? On the budget, if we had the,
It would be,
it's 3 million and something, increase from previous fiscal year. What is it? All right.
3 million. Right?
3 million, if that occurred, the increase would be 0.9%, which equates to $3,793,140 from the previous fiscal year, general purpose school fund.
That's a whole lot of information. What questions do you have?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I guess two questions. Well, one comment and one question. I think we're all hearing some of the conversation coming out of the General Assembly prior to the meeting with I think a projected shortfall of $500 million. They're looking for cuts, and I'm concerned that this may be one. The question that I had, if I haven't forgotten it, have to come back to you. I apologize, Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gourley?
Yeah, I would like to ask Director Nolan how she feels as far as the county finances. I know you're not going to know anything from this month till June the 20th, I believe, is the date for the new revenue release or whatever. Is that correct, Ms. Nolan?
That's correct.
How has the county fared so far?
Well, so far, just looking at the sales tax, which results from May, is county overall, which is schools, it was an increase of 3%, which was surprising, when we shut down about half the month.
You mean for March?
Online sales.
For March, yes, March.
For March. So, but we were only shut down 2 weeks in March, basically, or actually not about 10 days in March. So our real test will be April, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
because
which we won't know.
Definitely
So-
shut down the whole month.
Yeah, I think the environment in March and the environment in April is going to be totally different, because we had at least half a good month in March and so on. So I'm not sure that's really realistic, but you're saying property taxes are being paid. Our property tax revenue, can we expect to have as much as we have in the previous year, because people are not selling off and going somewhere, right? Or property's not going away.
That's right.
Okay. I think that pretty much answers my question. I'm just trying to get a handle on everything as to where things are going, and I don't know that any of us really know that. I think our budget committee has got a big chore here in the coming weeks of trying to figure out things in a very few weeks to do that. I don't really have any more questions. I'm thinking.
Thank you. Commissioner Blair?
Apologize for my senior moment there. Doug, as far as your conversation with the state people, with BEP, any feeling one way or the other that they've shared with you? Are they in sheer panic, or they feel pretty confident because of the...
I can answer that. Marion Dursky, who's over that, they said it will be fully funded. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Phillips? I'm sorry. Commissioner Cook? Yes.
It's hard to pass a budget when you don't know how to do it and when you don't know what the money is coming in. What I want to know, what is the request going to do to the property tax? The school board request, will it?
Yes, ma'am. That's a good question.
Up the property tax for the residents, or will it stay the same?
It would stay the same. We're not requesting a property tax increase. Yes, ma'am.
What the listening audience wants to hear.
Commissioner Phillips?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Would you re-explain to me, and maybe anyone else that might be listening, we keep mentioning the state and them approving raises, what that really means to the teachers, and what would be the state's portion and the county's portion?
I think looking at the 1.5% increase that we're proposing, but that's approximately with our teachers I think it's a little over $3 million. If that went away, obviously now that we would still do these step increases, okay, but there would not be any increase on their current base pay. Okay, but they may get a step increase, for the number of years. So that would go away. Now, my thinking is if they don't get raises, then we should be very fair across the board, which means that we would not give raises to our classified, nor will we give raises to our bus contractors, because we would be, sharing the load there. Now, obviously, that would reduce our revenue. So you would see that, we had $17,800,983. It would go to, we would reduce that a little over $2 million. We reduce going into our ending fund balance by a little over $2 million, because we would be keeping the step increases.
I think to the point that Commissioner Phillips wanted to make wanted you to help us make, is that those state raises are not fully funded.
No, they're
those
not.
State raises are partially funded, and there's matching local funds in order for us to give those, to pass those on to the teachers.
Correct, and it's predicated on the ability to pay, and it's based off of, I think it starts at 75% of that component of it, and then it goes down from there. Like, for example, some systems would be, paid more than other systems, and the local would have to pick up. And it's all based on the TASER index.
Just maybe one other question. I've got all of these figures in my head, and
A lot of numbers.
Even though I got a haircut today, I may have a little more room up there, but not a lot more. The administrative raises are hinged not upon state, right? Does all of that come from?
No, it all comes from there, yes, sir. All that, and when I say teachers, I'm talking about everyone, every certified employee. If the state doesn't pick up the raises, which includes your administrative staff, includes your all certified staff, then that would go away. And
new positions that we're creating this year, I'm not sure, Doug, if you've got that on top of your head, but administrative positions, it looks, what's that total? Is that like 76, or is that what that is?
That includes your administrative, teaching, and some classified. 76.9, 36 of them are what we're doing already, have them, but we're repurposing them. into the line item, what's that line item? 116. We're moving those 36 into 116 and bringing 32 in growth. Okay, and that gives us 68, and then we throw in our special ed as 5, and then we got some EA classified goes in there, so it rounds up to be like 76.9 total.
And that's system-wide, that's not administrators.
That's district-wide.
Administrators are 3.
Are you asking about the movements of the 2 specialists to the supervisors? And they are basically doing supervisor.
Exempt administrative.
Right.
Those are.
How many are we adding this year or proposing?
Those are people that are moving up into supervisory positions they're already doing that.
It's free.
And those tasks, and we're bringing them up to compensate them for those extra duties.
Yeah. But it's not to the degree of.
No, it's not. It's just a step on the
Step
index.
up, yeah.
I'm not sure I understood what you just said. No new positions this year? Is that what you just said?
These are the only positions that are.
No, he didn't say that. No.
Okay, that's what I heard. But
I'm sorry.
That we're just bumping some up. But
Right.
We're adding, right? We are
adding. We built in some.
Maybe that's my question. I'm maybe not clear, but how many new administrative positions are we adding? These are the exempt folks, not our teachers, not our frontline teachers, but exempt.
Well, we got 3 assistant principals. And is there anything else on there?
For administrative, no.
3 assistant principals.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
What you see on those 2 pages, that's it. There was a lot of work on this budget.
A lot of work.
Before we brought it even to our school board, because we understood what we're dealing with right now.
Commissioner Blair?
Even though this is my 14th year of getting to be involved in the budget process in one form or fashion, I too the numbers tend to run together a little bit with 31 pages. This is possibly more discussion or conversation, but in my mind, we basically have a couple of options, in my opinion, in my heart. Of course, the first option would be the 1.5% raise that would be a 425, almost 426 million budget with all the revenue, and leaving an ending fund balance of 4.9, or going with the 421 million, 575, 519, which I guess we could almost call flat, with a healthy 5.53% ending fund balance, especially since the fall is a big unknown. My question is that hypothetically, if we passed the 421, 575, and the state actually did give the raise, would the budget committee come back to meet to correct that, to correct our budget after the fact?
We certainly can amend it. Ms. Nolan, would you speak to that process for us?
Yes, we're pretty well versed at amending these budgets.
Say again?
Said we're pretty well versed in amending these budgets.
Commissioner Gourley?
Yeah, I was just going to say what Director Nolan just said. We have the authority to come back in September, October, November, whenever the need might be. We do it all the time. We take money out of fund balance and out of unappropriated fund balance and put it into some need that has to be met at the time, that we consider as a body of 21 members. At least 11 out of the 21 consider it a need that the county needs to take care of at the time. So we can do that. We can pass the 421, 575, 519 budget, and 3 months later come back and amend it up once we know what the legislature is going to do, and amend that budget and make, there's nothing to keep us from doing that. Am I correct, Director Nolan? You just said that, right? We do that all the time. So that's a normal process that we do. We don't normally do it in that big of increments. It's normally 25, 30, 40, 50,000, maybe $100,000 or something. Something breaks and we have to fix it. We have something we got to buy. But that is very much one possibility that we can do if there need be. And I don't think anybody knows right now. I mean, that's the big thing.
One thing
Commissioner Cook said, we don't know.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add too, because this kind of hits on what we talk about growth, doesn't pay for itself. With a 421 and some change budget, we would go into our ending fund balance at a little over 15 million. Our per pupil expenditure would drop by $200. And that goes back to growth, guys. I mean, it doesn't pay for itself. We know it doesn't,
I agree with that 100%. Growth does not pay for itself. And we've been looking here as a body for how many years, ever since I've been on the commission, to find a way until our legislature gives us a better way to fund county government other than on the backs of existing property owners. We're stuck with that.
And we had two things, Doug, that had brought forward. One of them was the pilot in lieu of taxes, and of course, that didn't work out. And then there was the Capital Maintenance Act that was going somewhere, but until this occurred with the state. So we've had some bad luck. We've been.
I agree, and yeah. Can we have a minute to think about this?
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we hear from all the commissioners, budget, health and ed, everybody, but I want to make sure we get through health and ed first. So Commissioner Cook or Ely or Gammon, did you all have any questions or any comments you want to make before we continue to proceed? Okay, anybody from budget have anything they want to share? Mayor, do you have anything you want to share? No, you're good. Okay. Commissioner
Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Bodary, the 1.5% is conference.
I'm sorry.
No, my fault. The 1.5%, what would that actually, how would that impact, say, a first-year educator? Do you know dollars and cents?
Bring them up to it.
What's the increase?
It would be an increase of $617.
$617. Yes, sir.
Wait, use your microphone, please.
Sorry. But the impact, okay, $617 a year for their salary, but our impact for the entire budget is what, about 60 million total with everything, with all the raises?
Pay increase for the.
Is it 6 million something? I think it is 6.
It is
6 million
for
everything. The 1.5% classified, certified, and bus contractors.
For the pay raises, it's 3.5 for the
teachers, right?
That's for the teachers and the.
About, what is it?
I'm sorry.
Less than 6.
For just the teachers alone, just for the teachers, and that's what you're asking, right? That just the teachers, it's the $3,088,000 just for the 1.5. That's not including any step raises. That's just that 1.5%. That's the number.
It's pretty minuscule for their annual salary, but it's very impactful,
and then,
as a total.
Commissioner, then you'd also have to add in their increase in their health insurance. That would be the benefit in retirement. Yeah.
All right, you've heard lots of information. Any more questions on Fund 141? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Well, maybe this will be an opportunity for health ed to be the bad guy rather than budget by, giving and taking away. Of course, I certainly would like to see us amend the budget in the future to include those raises, but unless the state does something, I would like to make a motion that we fund the $421,575,519 as the school board's budget.
I will second that.
Is there any discussion or questions about the motion? The motion is basically to keep the budget flat with step increases and the minor modifications that the superintendent has gone over, so it would eliminate the across-the-board 1.5 raises. With the caveat that should the state follow through with those, then we would revisit that at a later time.
Hopeful caveat.
Yes. Any more questions? Any discussion? All right. Rachel, will you call the roll? And again, this is just Health and Ed voting on this, folks.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Cook? Yes. Commissioner Ely? Yes. Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gourley?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
No.
Chairman Allen?
Yes. Very good. Motion carries. We will see this at budget tomorrow night. Budget will convene to discuss the health and the school's budget. Any other questions or any comments from you guys? Anything you want to share? All right. Is there any other business to come before this committee? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.